The wagon lurched forward, wheels grinding deep into the dust. A woman stumbled from the back, hitting the ground hard enough to steal her breath. The driver never looked back. He slapped the reins once, twice, and the mules strained against the harness. Dust rose like smoke behind them, swallowing his shape as he disappeared down the long road east. Eliza Caro lay there a moment, the grit dry in her mouth, the echo of hooves fading into the wind. The sky stretched wide and empty, too wide. Her shawl snagged on a thorn bush as she pushed herself upright, knees trembling. She tugged it free, the fabric tearing. The wind came howling down the ridge. It carried the smell of sage and old rain and something bitter. Loneliness, maybe. She pressed the shawl to her shoulders and turned toward the horizon, where the sun was burning low behind a line of black hills. The land was red and cruel and endless. Her lips cracked when she spoke. Please wait. But there was nothing out there to hear her. A buzzard circled overhead, silent as judgment. She took one step, then another, her boots heavy, her breath shallow. The wagon tracks veered off into the canyon, but she didn't follow them. She couldn't. Not after he'd said the words, "You ain't worth the feed you'd eat." The memories stuck in her throat like gravel. By dusk, she found a trickle of water in a dry creek bed, bent low, and drank until her reflection blurred. When she looked up, night had crept across the valley. Coyotes sang somewhere far off. The cold began to move in, a slow and merciless thing. She huddled beneath a bent cedar tree, hugging her knees tight, the wind slapping her hair and her face. Her body shook, not from fear but from the emptiness inside her. The last words of her kin echoed again and again. Useless, burden mistake. The stars stared down without mercy. Somewhere above, the thunder rolled. The storm was moving quick over the range. She could smell the iron in the air before the first bolt split the sky open. Eliza ran for the nearest cover she could find, a cut in the rock, shallow but deep enough to crouch beneath. Rain hit the earth like thrown pebbles. The flash of lightning lit the world in white, revealing twisted trees and the ribs of an old steer half buried in sand. The wind screamed through the canyon, and her heart beat so hard she could hear it in her ears. She pressed her back against the rock and closed her eyes. The cold crept up her spine. Then hooves, distant at first, then closer. A single horse, the rhythm steady, purposeful. She lifted her head, breath catching. Lightning struck again, and for a heartbeat she saw him, a rider silhouetted against the storm. Broad-shouldered, coat dark with rain, a rifle slung across his back. His horse snorted steam through the downpour. "Help!" she shouted or tried to. Her voice barely carried over the wind. The rider slowed. Another flash. His face turned toward her, half hidden by a beard and the brim of his hat. He said nothing, only dismounted, boots sinking into the mud. Eliza shrank back as he approached. He stopped a few paces away, eyes scanning her like a man judging a wounded animal. Then, without a word, he pulled the blanket from his saddlebag and tossed it to her. She clutched it close, the weight of it rough and warm. "You out here alone?" His voice was gravel and rain. Her nod was a tremor. "Anyone coming for you?" She shook her head. He studied her a long moment, the lightning cutting through his silence. When he finally spoke again, it was softer. "Then you'll freeze if you stay." She tried to rise, but her legs folded. He caught her before she hit the ground. The strength in his arms startled her, the steadiness in his grip steadier still. "Don't leave me," she whispered, voice small as the wind. He didn't answer, only lifted her up and carried her toward the waiting horse. The storm howled harder as they climbed into the saddle. She could feel the rise and fall of his chest behind her, the smell of pine and smoke clinging to his coat. He rode without light, knowing the trail by instinct. The rain fell sideways, and the thunder walked the earth around them. Somewhere in the blackness, wolves called from the ridge, answered by silence. After a long while, the dark broke open ahead, a flicker of lamplight through the trees. The shape of a cabin grew out of the storm, crouched low against the mountain, smoke rising from its chimney. He reined the horse to a stop, swung down, and carried her to the porch. The door creaked open with a push of his boot. Inside, warmth. The smell of firewood and stew long gone cold. He set her near the hearth, knelt, and stirred the coals back to life. Orange light spilled across the room, painting him in flickers. His face was weathered, his eyes old, but not cruel. "Eliza," she murmured, as though reminding herself she still existed. He looked up. "Jonah." That was all. No questions, no comfort, just names exchanged like a pact. When the fire caught strong, she reached her hands toward it, trembling. The warmth hurt at first, but then it settled deep into her bones. Outside, the storm screamed itself to silence. Jonah poured her water from a tin cup. "You can sleep by the fire. I'll take the chair." "I don't mean to trouble you," she said. He shrugged, pulling a blanket from the peg. "Ain't no trouble. Folks get lost out here. Wind throws him all kinds of ways." She watched him for a long moment, the quiet way he moved, the patience in it. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "You didn't ask what happened to me." He met her eyes, steady. "Don't reckon I need to." The fire popped. Rain dripped from the roof like ticking time. Outside, the storm passed west, leaving only the sigh of the wind through the pines. Inside, the cabin breathed, wood creaking, fire humming, two strangers bound by the same kind of silence. Eliza lay down near the hearth, the warmth soaking through the ache in her body. Her eyes closed, and for the first time in weeks, she dreamed of something other than leaving. Jonas sat by the window, watching the rain fade into mist. His hand brushed the old rifle on the wall, the ghosts it carried. The wind pressed against the cabin one last time, then went still. And if you'd been standing outside that night, high on the ridge where the thunder died, you might have heard it too. The faint whisper of the storyteller's voice carried through the cold air. The axe bit deep into the frozen wood, a sharp crack echoing off the ridge. Eliza flinched at the sound, wiping sweat from her brow, though the morning air cut cold enough to sting. Jonas split another log clean through and set it aside, steam rising from his shoulders. "Stack's leanin'," he said, voice rough from disuse. She knelt to straighten the pile, careful, precise. Her fingers were red and raw from the cold, but she didn't stop. Behind her, the fire inside the cabin breathed warmth through the half-open door. When the wind shifted, she caught the faint scent of coffee and pine smoke. It mingled with the sharp tang of sap, the distant hiss of melting frost. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the rhythm of the axe, the whisper of wind through bare trees. Then, a sudden shout. "Hold!" Jonah dropped the axe and swung his rifle up in one motion. A blur of movement, coyotes scattering from the chicken pen, one dragging a limp hand by the throat. The gun roared once. The animal tumbled, rolled, and went still. Eliza pressed a hand to her chest, heart thudding. Jonah strode down the slope, boots crunching over frost. He lifted the dead coyote by the scruff, muttering low, "They get bolder every winter." When he turned back, she was already patching the hole in the fence. "You make a ranch hand yet," he said. She smiled faintly without looking up. "Then I reckon I'm worth feed in, after all." He didn't answer, but she caught the ghost of something like a grin before he looked away. By noon, smoke coiled steady from the chimney. Eliza moved about the cabin, stirring stew, patching a torn sleeve, humming softly, a tune half remembered from before her world had emptied. Jonas sat near the window, carving a handle from a strip of oak, his motions slow and practiced. The only sound was the knife scraping against wood and the kettle whispering over the fire. Outside, snow fell quiet and steady. "Storm will bury the trail by night," he said. She glanced at him. "You worried someone will come?" He paused, the knife still in his hand. "Ain't worry. Just the way of things." But there was weight behind the words, something he didn't name. That evening, when the wind began to moan through the trees, she found him outside, staring toward the valley. The last of the daylight burned along the peaks, gold fading into blue. "Something's on your mind," she said softly. He didn't turn, just thinking how quiet it gets up here, how a man can forget the sound of his own voice. "You talk more than you think," she teased. He huffed out a small laugh. "Not till you showed up." She moved closer, her shawl brushing his arm. And before that, his jaw tightened. Before that was noise. Smoke. Men shouting and in the dark. Gun smoke, so thick you could taste it. Whole towns burning for gold they never found. He looked down at his hands, the scars along the knuckles. When it was over, I came here to bury what was left. Eliza's voice was barely a whisper. You did bury it. He met her eyes then, gray as the winter sky. No, just hit it. The silence stretched between them until the cold drove them inside. Later, while he dozed in the chair, she studied the rifle hanging above the hearth. Old, well-oiled, its stock dark from years of touch. Beneath it, a single silver cartridge gleamed on the mantel. She traced it lightly with one finger. Jonah stirred. You best leave that where it is. She turned, startled. Didn't mean nothing by it. He leaned forward, eyes steady on hers. That gun's cost me more than it ever gave. Best thing I ever did was hang it there. She nodded and stepped back. I understand. He rubbed a hand over his beard, sighing. No, you don't. But maybe you will. Days passed in their own rhythm. Chopping wood, feeding chickens, mending fences. The world shrank to the cabin walls and the land it guarded. Jonah spoke little, but he listened when she talked about the color of dawn, the sound of coyotes, the way frost clung to window glass like lace. Slowly, the silence between them grew gentle instead of sharp. One morning she caught him watching her as she brushed snow from the porch rail. His expression was unreadable, almost shy. You ever miss people? She asked. He thought a long moment. Not most of them. Some. She smiled. Guess I count in the some then. He looked down, a rare softness in his tone. You do. Spring crept in by inches. The ice melted from the creek. Wildflowers pushed through the mud near the fence line. Eliza knelt to plant a row of seeds beside the cabin, her hands brown with earth, her hair tangled by the wind. Jonah watched from the porch, carving again. You make it pretty, he said. It was lonely, she replied. Ground needs company same as folks do. He nodded, setting the carving aside. It was a small thing, roughly shaped like a bird, wings spread. He handed it to her, awkward. Figured it'd keep the garden safe. She turned in her hands, smiling. You're better with wood than words. He chuckled low. Reckon so. That night, after supper, she lingered by the fire while he put away his tools. The air between them was easy, quiet. Then, as he passed behind her, she said, without turning, Why'd you save me, Jonah? He stopped. The floor creaked beneath his boots. Didn't think on it much. Just did. Men don't ride through storms for strangers. He hesitated. Didn't see a stranger. Saw someone who wanted to live. She turned, eyes bright in the firelight. And you? You still want to? He met her gaze, steady. A man forgets, sometimes. You remind him. The flames cracked between them, filling the silence. Jonah sat, rough hands folded, words heavy. You've turned this place into a home, Eliza. Can't recall the last time I called anything that. Her breath caught. She didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thin strip of leather, tied into a small loop. Ain't much, he said, but maybe it's something. She stared at it, simple, honest, made by hand. Then she met his eyes. You didn't buy me, Jonah, she said. You found me. He nodded quiet. Then I guess we're both found. Outside, the night was soft and windless. The moon rose above the ridge, pale and cold. Inside, the fire burned low, shadows curling along the cabin walls. Two voices murmured, one deep, one gentle, blending like old wood and warm smoke. And somewhere beyond the pines, the storyteller's voice drifted faint through the night air, almost carried by the wind. The dog barked first. Low, warning, teeth bared toward the trail. Jonah looked up from the chopping block, axe frozen mid-swing. Dust rose far below the ridge, twisting in the sunlight. A rider was coming. Eliza stepped out onto the porch, hand shielding her eyes. You expecting anyone? Jonah's jaw tightened. Ain't nobody ever rides this way without a reason. The rider climbed the narrow path slow, deliberate. His horse was lathered and lean, his coat the color of storm clouds. When he reached the yard, he dismounted with the stiff grace of a man who'd spent too long in the saddle. Afternoon, he said. His badge caught the light, a silver star dulled by dust. Eliza's hand went to her throat. "Sheriff." He tipped his hat. "Caleb Dorn. I'm looking for a man might have come this way some years back. Goes by Jonah Vale now." Jonah met his gaze square on. "You found him." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. The wind stirred the edge of the sheriff's coat. "I'm not here to stir trouble," Dorn said. "Just need a word." Jonah set the axe down slow. "Then talk." They sat at the table inside, the air thick with silence. Eliza poured coffee that neither man touched. The sheriff's eyes moved around the cabin. The carved wood bird on the shelf, the rifle above the hearth, the woman standing quietly by the stove. "Fine place you built up here," he said finally. "Peaceful." Jonah's answer was flat. "That's the idea." The sheriff leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You ever hear of a man called the Ghost of San Verde?" Eliza froze mid-motion. Jonah's knuckles whitened on the table edge. "I've heard the name," he said. "Outlaw," Dorn continued. "Rode with a Confederate payroll after the war. 3 men dead. Never caught. Folks say he vanished into the mountains." Jonah's eyes flicked to the fire. "Lot of ghosts in the mountains." Dorn studied him long. "Thing is, Vale, you fit what's left of the description. Scars match. So does the rifle over your hearth." Eliza's breath hitched. "Sheriff, you're mistaken." "Jonah, he's not." Dorn raised a hand. "Ma'am, I'm just a skin." Jonah's voice came quiet, almost calm. "And if I said I was that man?" Dorn didn't flinch. "Then I'd say I've ridden a long way to see if he means to make things right." The wind sighed through the chimney. The coffee went cold between them. When the sheriff finally left the table, Eliza followed him to the porch. "You shouldn't have come here," she said softly. "I had to," he answered. "Law don't rest easy on ghosts." Jonah stood in the doorway behind her, shadow cutting across the floor. "You gonna take me in?" Dorn turned. "Not yet. I ain't looking to drag an old man down a mountain. Just need to know if what they said is true." Jonah's eyes were dark. "Depends what they said. That you ran when others burned. That you took gold never meant to be yours." Jonah stepped forward, voice rough as gravel. "I ran to stop more killing. Left the gold behind. That's the truth." The sheriff studied him, unreadable. "Men lie easy when they got peace to protect. Men also die easy when the law don't listen," Jonas said. The two stood silent a long moment, wind tugging at their coats. Finally, Dorn spoke. "I'll be riding through the valley tomorrow. If your conscience is clean, you'll meet me down at Dawn Creek. We'll talk again in daylight." He mounted, nodded once to Eliza, and rode off down the trail. Evening bled across the peaks. The air turned copper and blue. Eliza found Jonah sitting on the porch steps, hat low over his face. He hadn't moved since the sheriff rode away. "You told me once you buried your past," she said quietly. He didn't look up. Turns out the ground wasn't deep enough. "Is it true?" He exhaled slow. Every word he said about the killing. None about the gold. Her voice broke. "You should have told me. I was trying to be someone else," he said. "Didn't want you seeing the man I was." She stepped closer. "Then let me see the man you are now." Jonah looked up at her, eyes wet with the weight of old sins. "If I run, I stay the outlaw. If I go, maybe I make it right." She shook her head. "If you go alone, you die for a story that's already buried. Then what would you have me do?" Her voice hardened. "Stand. Face it. Not for the law. For us." The night pressed close around the cabin. A storm gathered somewhere over the valley, thunder grumbling like the growl of something waking. Jonah cleaned the rifle that hadn't been fired in years. The motion was slow, reverent, final. Eliza watched from the doorway, the lamplight painting her face gold. "You planning to fight?" she asked. "Planning to end it." He slid the rifle shut with a click. "Sheriff means to bring me in alive. But the ones that follow rewards, they'll come for blood." She moved to him, laid a hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll be ready." He looked up surprised. "I've lived through worse men than them," she said. "And I ain't losing what we built." Outside, a coyote howled. Then another. The sound rolled through the trees, hollow and wild. Jonah stared into the fire, jaw tight. "They'll come by dawn. Then let him," she whispered. At first light, the smell of dust carried on the breeze. Horses, leather, and gun oil. Jonah stepped out, rifle in hand. Down the trail, 3 riders approached, dark shapes against the morning glow. Eliza watched from the porch, steady as stone. "They ain't lawmen," Jonah muttered. "No," she said. "They're worse." The riders slowed at the edge of the clearing. The lead man grinned, yellow-toothed. "Heard the ghost was hiding up here. Guess he ain't so ghostly after all." Jonah leveled the rifle. "Ain't looking for a fight." The man spat. "Good. Makes it easier." Eliza's voice cut through the still air. "3 of you against 1 old man? You sure that's the legend you want to tell?" The men laughed, the sound low and cruel. Jonah glanced back at her. "Get inside. I'm done hiding," she said. The wind shifted then, bending the grass, setting the pines whispering like warning. Jonah's finger brushed the trigger, the world holding still before the storm. And far off, thunder rolled again, the kind that didn't come from clouds. By the time the riders dismounted, shadows stretched long across the yard. The sun climbed red through the haze. Eliza met Jonah's gaze. "Dawn Creek's not far." He nodded. "We'll finish this there." The old storyteller's voice rose faintly from somewhere in the wind, threading through the sound of the coming storm. The cabin door slammed against the wind. Snow howled across the ridge, hurling itself at the mountainside like a beast unchained. Inside, the fire roared, but not loud enough to drown out the pounding on the door. "Elias." Clara's voice broke, brittle and afraid. "They're coming." He didn't look up. His hands were steady, wrapping the worn leather holster around his waist. The Colt sat snug in place, old but clean to a shine. A breath fogged before him. "Let him come," he said, voice low, steady as stone. Through the window, torchlight shimmered in the snow. Figures moved down the trail, 5 of them. Her brothers. Clara's fingers gripped the back of a chair. "You don't understand. They won't stop this time." "Pa," he said. "I know what he said." Elias cut in, finally lifting his gaze. The old scar on his jaw caught the firelight. "I also know what you're worth." "You don't." The door shuddered under another blow. Wood splintered. A voice roared from the dark. "Mountain rat. Send her out, or we burn it down." Clara flinched. The sound of her brother's rage cracked the night like thunder. Elias moved past her, brushed her shoulder, and opened the door a few inches. The wind screamed in. Snow whirled through the gap. "I told you," he called out calm and clear. "She ain't going nowhere." A gunshot answered him. The bullet slammed into the doorframe inches from his head. He didn't blink, just shut the door, turned, and slid the bolt across. Clara's breath hitched. "Elias, please, don't do this for me. They'll kill you." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but not tonight." He moved to the window, crouched, and peered through the frost. The torchlight shifted, 2 flanking left, 1 creeping through the brush, another up by the ridge. Smart men, mean men, blood kin of hers, though not of her heart. The cabin creaked under the weight of the storm. Clara's eyes caught the rifle by the hearth, the long Winchester she'd learned to load under his patient watch. She grabbed it without hesitation. Her hands trembled, but her eyes did not. "I'll cover the back," she said. Elias looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Stay low. Wait till they step out of the dark." The first torch hit the window, flames licking against the glass. Shadows danced on the wall. A boot crashed through the front door, and a man burst in, shotgun raised. Elias fired once. The man dropped. Smoke filled the room. The others shouted, charging through the snow. Clara heard their boots crunching on the frost, the curses torn by the wind. Her breath burned in her chest. She took position by the back window. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear nothing else. Then, a shadow moved beyond the glass. She fired. The recoil slammed her shoulder, the shot splitting the night. The shadow fell. 2 left. Outside, the torches scattered. Flames licked the snow, hissing. Elias reloaded calmly, each motion practiced and deliberate. He stepped over the fallen man, kicked the shotgun away, and leaned against the doorframe, listening. "Go home," he called out. "Ain't no shame in quittin' while you still breathe." Silence. Then the voice of her eldest brother, low, cold, dripping venom. "You took what's ours. We'll take her back over your grave. Elias exhaled. You'll find my grave hard to dig. The next shots came fast. Wood splintered, glass shattered, the fire flickered low. Elias ducked, returning 2 rounds. One caught a shoulder, the other sparked off the rock wall. Then quiet, just the storm's howl and the hiss of dying fire. Elias's gaze swept the room. Clara, here, she whispered from the back, smoke curling around her face. He holstered the pistol, grabbed a blanket, and tossed it over the flames. We'll hold till dawn. Then we leave the ridge. Her voice shook. Leave? After all this is our home. He paused, looked at her. Then we make him understand that. Another torch flew through the broken window. Elias kicked it away, boots scattering sparks. He raised his gun again, then froze. A single figure was approaching through the storm, tall and heavy-shouldered. Her father. Clara's breath caught. Pa! The old man's face was half hidden under his hat, snow clinging to his beard. He carried no torch now, just the long hunting rifle he'd once taught Elias to shoot with. Step aside, son, he called. This ain't your fight. Elias stood firm, the Colt steady at his hip. It is now. The old man's eyes flicked to Clara. You think she's yours? She's broken. Always was. You can't fix what ain't worth savant. Something shifted in Elias's face, soft and hard all at once. You never saw what you had. The old man's jaw clenched. For a heartbeat, the wind seemed to stop. Then the rifle rose. Elias fired first. The crack echoed off the canyon walls. The old man staggered, dropped to his knees, snow turning dark beneath him. The others, her brothers, froze in place, shock written in their eyes. No one moved. Elias lowered his gun slowly. Take him home, he said, and don't come back. They obeyed. Silent as ghosts, they lifted their father's body and disappeared into the storm. Clara watched until the last torch vanished into the dark. Then she turned to Elias. His shoulders sagged, the fight gone from his eyes. She stepped closer, resting her forehead against his chest. The storm raged on outside, but in the cabin there was only breath and the soft creak of the fire. You built me a home, she whispered, even when I thought I didn't deserve one. He brushed a hand through her hair. Everyone deserves one. The wind howled, then softened. Snow drifted through the cracks of dawn, and by the time the sun rose over the ridge, the cabin stood quiet, 2 shadows against the firelight, side by side, unbroken. Some say you can still see the smoke curling from that cabin, years after the snow claimed the trail. Folks whisper the story on long winter nights, about the woman cast away as useless, and the mountain man who built her a life worth living. And they say when the wind turns just right through the pines, you can still hear her laughter, bright as spring after the long, cold storm.